المستشفى وعملت تحويلة طبية بس، ولكن أهملوا الملف عشان حالتي مش حياة أو موت.
Another proof, if needed, that Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, especially the rarest type, are not well known even for medical professionals. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is a connective tissue disorder with numerous of symptoms, the most common ones being joint hypermobility, skin hyperextensibility, and tissue fragility. Young Youssef here suffers from Ehlers-Danlos syndrome kyphoscoliotic type, a type who has specific challenges that can be life-threatening. We often talk about vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome being the most dangerous type of EDS, but with the lack of information, the overlapping symptoms common to VEDS, and the specific symptoms it has, kyphoscoliotic Ehlers-Danlos syndrome has the recommendations from professionals to be considered with the same care than people having vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. But let's talk about the danger of kEDS, especially in Youssef's situation. Set aside the fact he lives in a country with no access to medical care currently, and that is unable to walk without human assistance due to his syndrome, making him at high risk consider where he lives. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome impacts Youssef with joint hypermobility, muscle hypotonia, and tissue fragility. That on its own makes him more prone to injury and delay of healing. Without proper muscle tone to keep joints in place, anything can dislocate easily. And I know what I'm talking about. With Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, I can partially dislocate my joints just by doing literally nothing, like sleeping. So imagine him that has less muscle tone due to his congenital hypotonia, one of the main symptoms of kEDS. In Youssef's case, kEDS is also associated with low bone density, meaning he is more likely to have fractures. That on its own usually is not life-threatening. But kyphoscoliotic Ehlers-Danlos syndrome comes with early onset important scoliosis. Youssef already had a surgery at 12 years old for his scoliosis. And you can still see pretty quickly on his videos that his scoliosis is still very visible. That surgery happened just before everything collapsed, and he didn't have access to checkup and proper therapy since then. More importantly, because he's a growing teenager, the surgery he had will need correction. Now, put that surgery on loose joints that can be easily damaged, on a child that is still growing up, and tell me that with all the risk known with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, it's safe, that it won't collapse and damage anything major, especially not combined with the high-risk place he's in and the high fall risk he has due to his feet deformity. And I didn't even mention the high risks of pulmonary and cardiac issues associated to the very bad scoliosis, who might or might not have a deadly impact depending on the efficiency of the surgery had, and that are known risk of premature death in his condition. Let me tell you loud and clear, that on its own is a life or death situation. If something happens, they won't have the time or the resources to manage the situation properly. But for uneducated doctors, maybe that's fine. So let's talk about more commonly well-known risks associated with kyphoscoliotic Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. His condition is associated with aneurysm of both major and minor arteries, including the aorta. Arterial dissection and arterial ruptures are also symptoms associated to kEDS. Those are life and death risks that should be very much considered with the same care than for vascular EDS. Based on research, people living with kyphoscoliotic Ehlers-Danlos syndrome have a reduced life expectancy because of their medical condition compared to healthy people. I'm not gonna go further into the other symptoms that he should be followed for, because it would be too long, and I already made a video in the past explaining kyphoscoliotic Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. But I needed to say how baffling it is to hear that professionals don't think it is a life or death situation. Let me tell you, the moment anything happened, it will be such a life or death emergency, they probably won't have the time to do anything. Now, what can we do? Not much, unfortunately. We can continue to support Youssef to help him access the nutrients his body needs to not get weaker because of the lack of vitamins or anemia. We can continue to talk about his story and share it, and pressure our representative to take actions to stop the nonsense that impacts him and everyone else living in dire condition. The Ehlers-Danlos, chronically ill and disabled community should stand with each other and not let the story of those less fortunate than us being untold and forgotten. I wish you lots of spoons and thank you for your help to Youssef.